Did you do an audio book?
I did do an audio book. It's read by me, so if you have
Did you do it?
listen, oh, yeah.
I did the same thing, man. How crazy? Can we talk about that real quick?
Yeah, actually, no, yeah.
Let's do this.
Please talk about that.
I drastically misrepresented how hard it was to read a book.
So, I'm here with Matt Best, the author of the forthcoming book, Thank You for My Service.
Thank you, Marty. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, and the co-founder of Black Rifle Coffee Company.
Yes, sir.
You drink his coffee, I hope, if you're watching this. And we've got Geraint Jones, all the way over here from the UK, former British infantry soldier turned author.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers, brother. Take it. Look at that. Well, cheers to some BRC.
Cheers.
Heck yeah.
So I want to start off, we were already talking before we got the cameras rolling here, and there's a lot that people don't know when it comes to being a veteran turned author. And one of the things that I think jumps out as the most obvious thing is you have to put your book through a pre-publication review if you want to do it right. And it can get to be kind of a hairy process. Matt, as you know, this is your first book coming out, and you've served in a variety of as public as you are now, you've served in a lot of very sensitive areas over the course of your career. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that process was like to get something like this cleared?
Sure. Going into this process of writing a book, I knew that there was obviously going to be sensitivities, I'm sure as you did too, about what information I wouldn't share. Like there's certain things that I've done that I won't even tell people in conversation. Not that I'm a cool guy by any means, but you obviously know that information can't be public. So when I wrote it, I already had that understanding as far as OPSEC and the guidelines. But obviously if you author a book in not only fiction, but nonfiction, fiction as well, you have to get a review process because sometimes people write in SOPs and TTPs that are very relevant to certain units that are doing those, and even if it's in a fictional sense, they're too accurate. So getting the review process, I think 3 different government agencies went through and scrubbed the book. So it's nice to know that like it's signed off on and everything's good to go. The last thing you ever want to do is, provide information to a terrorist organization that would put your teammates at risk or something like crazy like that. That's far right, obviously, but yeah.
It's a consideration, though. I mean, it's something that you think about.
Yeah, national security and all that stuff. So yeah, my review process took 17 months. I just tried to one-up you.
Yeah, you did. You one-up me. Well, I actually didn't even put this into the Ministry of Defence for review. I didn't do any high-speed job at all. I fucking lugged a machine gun around and just got blown up. That was like...
That's a super high-speed job, so don't say it wasn't high-speed.
So we took anything out that would be like SOPs, TTPs. There was nothing in there that wouldn't be like is absolute public knowledge. And I concentrated more on, it was about the people rather than what we were doing so much. And we didn't put it in, and that was a choice that the publisher made with me because the idea of the book was to be brutally honest about the Army and say things that the Army would probably not want the book to go out, not for operational reasons, but just because there's some things in there about the kind of like the brutal honesty about how guys behave in barracks and that kind of stuff. That they probably wouldn't want out there.
That's interesting to know because it is such a subjective process during the review that I know certain things from other things I've done in my life were pulled not because of operational security, but solely because they didn't like the narrative. And so they redacted some parts because I wasn't talking about being a cool guy in some covert operation. I was talking about, there were instances, not in the military, but as a contractor where we were drinking and having fun and, there was sex involved and that kind of stuff. They're like, oh God, no, we don't want to be part of that. It's like, that's the reality of war though, dude.
Yeah, so because you have that kind of like that title of Ranger, there's certain people have a certain narrative about what that means.
Yeah.
And they don't want that to be, they don't want people to, I suppose there was that one recently that some SEALs have been sent back for drinking in Iraq, and everyone that's been on deployment was like, no fucking shit, fucking operators drink when they're on fucking deployments. But there's this weird narrative that they have about the perfect soldier. It's kind of, do you find that frustrating that they wanted to pull that stuff?
Yes and no. The DoD was actually pretty awesome with their review. It took forever, but I'm very thankful for them leaving. I thought they were going to pull a chapter. They didn't. It worked out. It just took a long time. Yeah. But it's interesting that, it's such a subjective process because some of the stuff that got pulled, I was like, what? That was a joke. It has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. Well, we've had issues as well when I've ghosted on other books for guys where they've actually been really helpful, the guys that were working on it, because they've said things like, hey, look, you mentioned here that you were kind of fucking around when you got, when you got injured. If somebody was to see this and know that you'd put a claim in against the military, you could find yourself in like legal difficulties because you're kind of admitting here that it was your fault rather than theirs.
Interesting.
And they've been kind of helpful with taking little things like that in, because once it's in print and you put it out there, you never know like what legal like kind of liabilities you're opening yourself up for.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, you specifically coming from the UK, I think that even though we come from a military background here, we still kind of have those First Amendment rights about freedom of speech and kind of being able to print whatever we want as long as it's not going to put somebody's life in danger. And I think that, especially you, Matt, like I think you were very gracious to play by the rules and kind of make allowances for some of the things that they want to take.
Well, you want insurance, man. The last thing you ever want to do is put something out and have someone get pissed off. Like that's the last thing you want.
Exactly. And so I'm curious, coming from the UK, is there any additional things that you have to worry about?
Yeah, we don't get the same kind of First Amendment rights as you get. I thought I would be able to say, hey, this is my book, this is my opinion. If I think this person was a coward, I thought he was a coward. And I wasn't able to able to be that kind of direct. So I was able to put in instances and then let people, take their own opinion of it. But I wanted to say flat out, I thought this person was a coward. And I think that I should be allowed to say that, but I wasn't allowed to put that in, that kind of stuff. There was a lot of going back and forth with me and the publisher's lawyers about things, and I ended up pulling entire sections of the book because rather than dilute it to the point that they wanted it, I would rather just not have that story in there whatsoever. But it was really frustrating because I was always just under the impression that, if you're saying it's my opinion, you can say what the hell you want. But
yeah, but it's funny, and another thing, we're going on this legal tangent, but there are sensitivities based off of talking about an individual in any context, not even in the military. So I actually had a lawyer through my publisher come through and scrub my whole book, and there was about 8 pain points. And I changed pretty much every single name and call sign before I even wrote it because, I'm not going to I got friends doing some cool stuff still, and, I never want to put a true name out. But yeah, it would be weird about like, hey, this story in Los Angeles, could she know that this is this? Because you say something about it there. I'm like, oh, wow, how they draw those parallels into potentially opening herself up for legality, which is crazy.
Libel and slander are still a thing, even with the First Amendment. Mm-hmm. I'm curious for both of you. When you go into writing this book, do you have an idea of what a good book is in your head, and did you try to translate? And
we're both infantrymen, so probably not.
Sorry,
pass the crayons for you. Yeah, exactly. It's a picture book.
But I mean, I'm sure like everybody here is probably. I know in high school I used to read those old Vietnam Ranger Alert books about SEALs and stuff, and there's an idea in my head about what makes a good story about the military. Did you guys have any of those preconceived notions going in, and if so, how did those apply to telling your own story?
For me, I've read a lot of military books throughout my life, and there were aspects that I thoroughly enjoyed about them, and there were aspects that I thought were somewhat dry and too matter of fact. And so going into this, that's why I think I was able to sign with such a great publisher, was they saw the potential for this to kind of be revolutionary in its narrative and the way it was told, because I'm not the guy that's going to be like, I went through the room and put two through his chest. It's just not my personality. And so I was hoping that we would do something completely different. And I think that's what I did. Obviously, it's going to be completely up to people's opinion on what they think of the book. But yes, at least I went in there knowing I can tell a story. I'm a good storyteller. Let's just get people that are far smarter with words than me. So I did that, and then they come and help me out.
Yeah. What about you guys?
I read like a lot of military memoirs growing up, like a lot of Vietnam ones, a lot of Second World War ones, and the ones I liked the best were like Michael Hurst's Dispatches. Books like that, which were just kind of like I felt were there was no. Like there's glory if you look for it, but it's not like thrown in your face. I don't like that over the top kind of, because the reality of being on deployment is jerking off in porta potties and that kind of thing. Like that's a part of it. And I thought there's no one's writing about any of this stuff. It's like I think we're on the same page here. I'm like there's no like not that the world needs to know about jerking off in 120 degrees with a respirator on, but it just to me it's like that is a big part of the deployment. That's a part of being a soldier. And I just, when I went back to reading these other books that I'd enjoyed growing up, and I read them again, I'm thinking, it's not just all combat, but that's all that's in the books. And I'm thinking, right, that's what I can bring to the table. I'm not Victoria Cross winner. I'm not, it wasn't the guy that shot Bin Laden or any of that stuff. So I thought, well, what can I bring? And I thought that's brutal honesty. So that's kind of like what I wanted to do. I thought I want to tell everything about the deployment and not try and dress things up. This is how it was. This is the good. This is the bad, and this is the very fucking ugly.
And I haven't read it yet. I'm super excited just based off what you're saying, because I think that is the military experience, right? Often war is romanticized, especially in Hollywood, and it's just war, veteran comes home and is broken, you know? And so it's so much more fun to tell like a full, compelling, visceral experience of everything that makes that war and military experience, like going through schools and infantry and telling the fun parts about, dude, you're doing no sleep, you're hungry, or you're getting shot at. You got to have a little fun, because there's a chance tomorrow doesn't come, so you might as well fucking enjoy it with your buddies, because that's all you have is the small group of men and women that you're working with every single day. So why are you going to be miserable and just so serious? Like, you got to screw around a little bit, not during the operation, obviously, but when you're back in the barracks or the team room. Like, laughter is medicine. It's like that whole humor through horror thing, and that's really cool that that's kind of the way your book's going.
Dude, like, the dark humor is how you get through it. And that, I feel, is it's just been missing from, like you said, the Hollywood, and you don't. It's the dark humor that allows you to get through the dark moments. And I don't think I've ever laughed as hard since as I did in Afghanistan. Like, where I was at the point sometimes where I literally had to get my dick out and piss, because I was going to piss my pants. Like, that's very hard to achieve that level of laughter, but it's because your emotions are going. 1 minute they're up here with adrenaline, the next minute they're up there with humor, and then, you know, sometimes they're down there with grief. And it's, you know, when you're on deployment, when you're at war, you will go to the limits of like the human experience. And humor is a huge part, though.
It's an interesting perspective, not to go on this tangent here, but I reference that in the book, that as a contractor, I give so much credit to the guys that would sit, and gals that would sit around the fire pit at night over a drink, and all we would do is just make jokes and talk about how crappy or this and that was fun, and all of that played such a huge role in my YouTube channel, because I had a bouncing board for all these creative, hilarious people that just gave me ideas, and I'd write them down and then put them into like an actual piece of content. So yeah, some of the funnest moments I've ever had were definitely overseas.
Great, man. There's a lot of really funny people in the military too. Yeah, like really funny people.
And there's no barriers. There's no, you know, relatively, I don't know how the military is now, but at least back then it was like, there's no HR department, so you pretty much get away with whatever.
And it's a meritocracy as far as, are you funny or not? Like, if you're not funny, there's no
give them a chance. It's just like, shut up, Ken Evans, you're stupid, man.
Yeah, you're not in platoon skits next year.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So when it comes to actually, you know, you're going through the process of writing something, and this is before you know the book will be a success, or before you know how people will receive it. It's before you've even shown that first draft to your first, you know, close friend or whatever, the trusted reviewer, right? What's going through your head about how people will perceive you, and you kind of putting yourself out there in a, you know, writing, I feel, is a very very honest thing. Like, even if you're, you know, making something funny or making it darker or anything like that, you're still exposing yourself. Of course. You know, what's the sort of stuff that you think about when you're going through that process and wondering how it'll be received, or how people will think of you after they read this?
For me, I already have the opportunity to have. I look at creative and entertainment similar to business, right? So, you know, you have a direct-to-consumer line. How do I increase sales channels to give opportunity to purchase a quality product? For me, that's what the book was. I'd already done so much YouTube skits. We did a movie. I've done a lot of stuff in the entertainment world, so I've already kind of got the reception, and I've already got the hate from people that disagree with my style of content. So for me, going into this, because it hasn't been released yet, this is a true version of my type of entertainment personality. And I know that there's a market for it, and I also know that there's not a market for it, and there will be people that probably read this book that go, that's offensive, you can't say that. But, you know, all I can do is pay tribute to the people I served with and my fallen friends, and then hopefully make a lot of people understand their story and just laugh their fucking asses off through the whole book. So I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, you just pick up on that. It's like, if you try and make something for everyone, then you're just making shit. You know, you're going to have critics, if you're making a good product. That's one of the, that's a sign that you're doing some good work. My thing with the kind of the nerves about putting it out has changed. It's changed over like the last few years. First piece of work I put out, I was, understandably nervous because I was opening myself up for criticism. I'm not a public person, so it was a new experience for me. But at the same time, thanks to the army, I had that thing in my head of, well, look, it's not going to fucking kill you, no matter what it is. It can't get that bad. And then I had last year I had 2 books come out on the same day, one that I'd ghostwritten and one which I'd put out under my own name. And I was visiting family because we had a funeral, and like later that day, and I went for a walk down the beach, waves crashing down, bit of a Hollywood moment really, and I just had this really nice moment of thinking like, really doesn't matter how the books do. Like the sales really don't matter. Like what matters is family. What matters is being outdoors. And I thought, yeah, I want them to do great, but I actually really didn't give a shit. I stopped caring. Now, when this came out, it was a different story because I was announcing to the world that I had a drug addiction. I was announcing to the world that I was being suicidal. I was announcing basically that I was a failure in many ways that I'd always been like terrified of people finding out. Some of my family knew, some of them didn't. So I was about to make it like known to all my family, all my friends. And that was kind of like, there was moments where I was thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Like doing
no,
this.
but that's courageous in its own way. And I think that, you can't be DJ Khaled and all you do is win. Like the reality of life is you have struggles, you have trepidation and transition, and you have all that stuff. And I'm similar. I talk about having a struggle with alcoholism in one point in my life and hitting fucking pretty much my rock bottom. And, I would never be a successful entrepreneur if I didn't have those experiences in life. 100%. And so hopefully when people have the opportunity to read that kind of stuff, they go, fuck man, I'm kind of down in life right now, mm-hmm. But if someone pulled out themselves out of the slums and, got to do what they love and write and create and whatever art you love, then that's awesome. It gives people a light at the end of the tunnel.
I totally agree, mate. And the thing, if I had put out a book where I cut all that stuff out and just did like
it's dishonest.
It is dishonest, yeah. Exactly. And not only that, and I know I would have regretted that massively, and that would fucking haunt me not putting that in.
But I truly believe, and maybe you have insight in that, like people would see through that. If I came out and was like, I started business and every business succeeded, like that's not the case. Yeah. Like I out stuff in there where I'm like, I failed as a fucking leader, I failed as a team member in business, and like people need to know that.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between a good book or a decent book and a great book is that authenticity to, the people that were there for these events that you're talking about. And I think, being able to kind of open yourself up like that, everybody goes through hard times in life. And I think that there's, of course, I think some people probably had it better than others or whatever, and not all problems are equal, that's fine. But I think the fact that, especially with YouTube, being able to show that, hey, you can reach your bottom, your personal bottom, and you can climb back out of that, I think that's inspiring. I think if you're able to wrap that up in a story that, one will kind of provide context to history. I mean, we're all participants in the war on terror. That will be studied for generations to come, and these books are giving context to that war. But it's also for the people today alive now, the people that aren't historians or the people studying this. It's providing inspiration. It's providing laughs. It's providing that look into something that is very human.
And it's providing a really photoshopped face that makes me look like I'm a cartoon character.
And I think that's a great thing to bring up, though. What are the things, going into a book, it's not just opening up a Word doc. There's a lot that goes into publishing a book. What are some of the things that maybe people would be surprised to hear are part of the process, and what surprised you about the process?
I didn't realize how much work it was going to be. I thought my thought was false in the sense of once I hit that last chapter, it's done. And for me, that 17 months in DoD review, very much complicated, but provided the opportunity to create such a better book. So, after that, I'd ended it with launching Range 15, the movie we did. That's how the book ended. 17 months later, essentially, I was 2 years into being an executive and this whole new momentum in a different company. And I was like, I don't want it to end this way. So I flew out one of my writers and sat down, did like another 30 hours of tapes, and we just hammered it out and did another 3 chapters at the end of the book. So then when that was all locked, I didn't realize, the marketing of it, naming this. I changed the title 3 different times, and then how do we get a cover that you're comfortable with, and then going through the design process, especially when you have a publisher that might not be completely in line with what you think should happen. No one's right? It's just a matter of getting the best product out. So it's just been consistently brutal, and then I'm about to go on a whole media tour for a month. So, but again, right, what you were saying, family matters the most, and I'm so thankful. It's why I love this country so much, is I've been provided the opportunity to work my ass off and show people who I am as a human. So it's what a cool experience to have that.
And Gez, I know you've had you particular thoughts about working with publishers and how that can kind of complicate your ability to tell a story.
Yeah, I mean, look, dude, when I first wrote this book, there's stuff in there that I can't say on camera, which I took out myself because I just realized that it was just a tin of worms that just shouldn't be opened. So when I did give the book in, I felt like I'd already kind of taken it down a couple of notches. So then when lawyers and publishers get involved and start trying to take it down more notches, that could be really frustrating because, like you said, we are part of a history, and I don't want to leave something behind. I don't believe in censoring history. I think you should put it all out there, put it all out there as it is. In terms of working with publishers, I think what I get frustrated with is it's not the individuals that I'm working with, but it's the fact that these are big fucking machines, and they don't move at the speed that I like to move at. Like I have written books within a month, and then it takes over a year to get them on a shelf, and that to me is so fucking frustrating because I want to be moving on to the next one, I've got a couple of books right now which are basically I wrote at the beginning of last year, which are still on my laptop. They should be on a fucking shelf. So I get really, really frustrated with that process. So that to me was that, and I can understand why it is, because most writers don't work at that pace. Most writers, they put out a book a year or so. As far as my agents and editors tell me, almost every writer comes in after deadline, which is a military person. You can't even get your head around that. The idea that you have his deadline.
Yeah, I was like,
set.
what? I was like 2 weeks before deadline.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
I don't get how you can be. As a professional, you'd be okay with, like that just grips my shit. So yeah, I'm starting to look. There's a lot of great things about working with traditional publisher. So like you've got the press tour coming up now. You could probably do that yourself given your platform, but most people can't. You don't have access to the BBC or the newspapers and stuff without without a publishing house. So they're fantastic for that side of things. The editors that you work with, great. But it's big businesses, and big businesses move fucking slowly. So I didn't realize I'd be as frustrated with it as I am.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons of publishers. It's definitely been a positive experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for
sure. For guys that are looking to get into storytelling or are thinking about writing their own book, what's the best advice you can give them about how to approach that, both from a storytelling perspective, but also from the business of getting a book out there?
Yeah, for me, that's a loaded question, because it really matters about where you are as an individual. For me, I had the opportunity to hire an insanely epic editor, Nils Parker, who took this idea and structure and came in and goes, all right, Matt, this is great, but like we need to work the storylines in here. We do callbacks. Let's format these paragraphs. So it just flowed better. Mm-hmm. So that for me was super helpful, because I can write jokes and I can write stories, but then how do you formulate it in this one awesome package that's super tight, edited correctly? And but the big part about that is like trial and error. I write a story, share it with somebody that's not a yes man, that's trustworthy, and go, that kind of fucking sucks, man. Because I pulled 3 chapters from this during the initial process where I'm like, those don't fit, and you just can't really have an ego in it. You gotta, not everybody's gonna like it, of course, but you have to at least test the market and see how they react to it, and know that you might be wrong sometimes, because you can't get your ego involved and say, but it's my art, I'm the fucking best. Yeah. When people are like, 4 people tell me that story sucks, it probably sucks.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things that, especially people that are kind of new to this, that you have to wrap your head around is sometimes you have to kill your darlings. Sometimes you have to pull that thing that you worked so hard on.
You have to get your reps in too. So it's like, this is your first book, but it's not your first time of telling a story. So I think if somebody's coming in and they're going to try and do a book and they've never done any kind of storytelling before, it's probably going to fucking suck, because you've got to get your reps. You've got to get your reps in. You have to practice. And it depends, like you said, to the degree that you're going to. If you're going to do everything on that book, then you need to be great at structuring a sentence, and you need to be great at picking the right words, like down to that nitty gritty. If you're going to be working with other people, then you need to be able to, like you said, accept criticism. And once you want to make a book, you have to stop thinking that it's your story and have that ego attached to it. Because if it's your story, then why the fuck do you need to put it in a book? If it belongs to everybody at that point, and if it belongs to everybody, then everybody gets to have input on it.
That's fair.
I'm kind of curious. These are both books that I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy. But as far as you as the authors, what's the part in that book that stands out to you that you're really hoping, like, man, I hope the readers pay attention to this part, or I hope the readers love this part as much as I love it?
Wow, that's a good question, Marty. It's almost like you're a journalist or something. Yeah, for me, I think the takeaway is to shut this book and go, what a fucking wild ride and what an amazing experience. When going into it, I really wanted people to laugh. I wanted them to cry. I wanted to see the honest, transparent view of my personality. And so obviously there's stories that are like, I hope you just get entertainment out of them, but there's a couple in there, obviously some couple more things with loss of some friends where I really hope just to define their legacy and have it in print. So when I'm long dead, someone can pick up this book and go, let's just thank you for my service. I'll give it a read, understand that these awesome American icons were fighting and they died doing what they loved, and it memorializes them forever. And that's kind of my whole goal in life going forward, is to memorialize them, the service that has built this country, and then telling it obviously in a compelling way. So.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. It's to be able to, not just the fallen guys, but just the comrades in general. Like you said, to know that there's these fucking 18-year-old private soldiers who used to find IED after IED after IED, and they're not going to be in any museums or anything like that. But they did that fucking job heroically, and this will be around after I've gone. In some place, it's going to be around, and if in 200 years someone might read it, might be one person, but he's going to know about those blokes, and that to me is massive. I actually had a similar experience to you. Like the book got held up for a while, and because it did, I'm so happy because I got to add some extra chapters on.
Yeah.
Because what happened before was it was like, here's the deployment, boom, here's my fucking crash afterwards, and that's kind of where it was. But because of the delay, I got to actually add some more chapters in, which were about coming out the other side and putting in there my best suggestions for how people, or especially soldiers who are struggling, to find purpose and to find reasons to go on, how they can do that. And that is now my favorite part. That's my favorite part of the book. I'm really, really happy that got put in. So sometimes these delays can be like, they can really work in your favor. It's obviously it's a balance, but it's that to me is I'm really glad that the book could finish on like a message, not of hope, because it's not like, oh, maybe you'll get better. It's like, you can, and this is how you can do it.
Great.
So yeah.
Where can we find your books?
For me, I'm sure yours, anywhere books are sold. It will be published everywhere. It will be in airports. It will be at Walmart, Target.
And Gez, where can they find your books? And this is published in the UK.
It's published in the UK, Australia, Canada. If you're getting it, if you're American and you're getting it, best place to get it from is from this table. If you go to Amazon, get it on Amazon.
Thanks for coming on, guys. This is...
Thank you for my service.
Nice.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers. You said cheers. You got to cheers.
Nothing like an awkward outro.